that guy growing up. I mean, he was one of my guys. Holy smokes. So when I was bartending, this is like 95, 96, okay? And I'm in college. And at the end of the shift, we would watch baseball on the West Coast. And at that time, the Mariners were really, really good. And they had Ken Griffey Jr. And so about 10:30, 11, whatever, depending on how the night went, 11, we would watch a few innings of Mariners baseball with Jay Buhner and Ken Griffey Jr. and all those dudes. A-Rod was there, believe it or not, before going to the Rangers.
Early Rod.
That's
right. That was a sick team.
I listened to an interview over the weekend with Harold Reynolds, who was a veteran by the time Ken Griffey was drafted by the Mariners. And he talked about they knew all about Griffey because of his dad, and his dad was part of the Big Red Machine in the 1970s and the Cincinnati Reds. He said, he told Cowherd, he said, year 2 he comes up and he starts taking BP, Blake. Year 2, he's 19.
Yeah.
Okay. And Harold said it didn't take but a few minutes to realize he's the best player on the field.
Yeah, he's different.
Year 2, he got drafted straight out of high school, spent 1 year going through the minors, whatever that's worth. And then he was ready to go. He was the most talented, best player on the field for the Mariners.
He and Andrew Jones are kind of the last guys to just sprint through. He and Andrew Jones both made the majors at 19. Which is crazy.
It is crazy. Will asks, where did you watch the Griffey doc? I watched it on Major League Baseball Network.
Yeah, I think if you Google Ken Griffey documentary, it should pop up.
I'm sure you can stream it, but I just watched it on my TV last night.
It was fantastic. Growing up, I liked Ken Griffey Jr., of course. Obviously, he was swaggy, so I tried to wear my hat backwards.
Dude.
My dad said, you can't wear your hat backwards. I said, well, Ken Griffey does. He said, well, when you can hit like Ken Griffey, you can wear your hat backwards like Ken Griffey.
Ed, I love it.
I've never worn my hat backwards again. So.
Well, all right. You know what I thought was cool about the doc? First of all, Harold Reynolds was great. Jay Buhner was great. You know who else was good? LeBron. I thought LeBron's just, kind of his – LeBron's an Ohio kid, young man, but an Ohio kid at that point. And, man, you could tell how much respect he had for Griffey Jr. So I'm sure you can find it online. And it's good. God, he was so good. Blake, if he doesn't get robbed in Cincinnati, and he started off so well, but if he doesn't get robbed in Cincinnati from injuries, there's no telling. And he didn't take steroids. What if he would have taken PEDs? What would his numbers have been like?
Yeah.
He already crushed the baseball.
I mean, you could argue they'd be Bonds-esque.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. You can go down that whole road, and I know that's not what we're doing this segment, but
well, we're about to have a former baseball coach on.
The Barry Bonds argument about whether or not he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame is incredible because if you cut his career in half for pre-steroids Bonds and post-steroids Bonds or post-alleged steroids Bonds, however you want to say it,
right?
He had a better F-WAR, which is basically your value to the game. He had a better value to the game for his first half of his career than Derek Jeter did his whole career.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, Barry Bonds was literally a one-man wrecking machine, and that's what Ken Griffey Jr. was too.
And do you know how much he was walked? But anyway, back. All right, we're about to have John Cohen on in just a minute and discuss the impact of the flag issue on MSU, Ole Miss, Southern Miss, among other schools in the state. But if you get a chance, watch the Ken Griffey Jr. documentary. It's fantastic. And it just brought me, that we watched a lot of baseball in the mid-'90s, and we watched a lot of, Ken Griffey Jr. with the Mariners because they were the hot team, and he was the cool kid. What a phenomenal athlete. 6'4". Harold Reynolds talked about that. He was like, he was 6'4". Baseball players weren't that tall and big back then. Your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance and favorites.com. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau insurance agent working for you in all 82 counties. Farm Bureau Insurance. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. We are streaming on our YouTube channel right now. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We're streaming on our YouTube channel. You can watch the show. It's set up like a TV show and a radio show. So however you want to consume it, we're also streaming on the Out of Bounds radio app. And, of course, you're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We want to welcome in John Cohen, MSUAD, on the Miller Lite guest line. John, there's a lot going on. That's an understatement for everybody in the country. And we've already hit some challenging issues and topics with you the last 3 months as everybody's trying to work their way through the pandemic and what that may look like for their life and their business and so on. But today, with everything that is playing out down at the state capitol and within the legislature, I wanted to bring you on after the NCAA's release last week, where they extended their policy banning championship events where Confederate flags are flown, and that has to do with Mississippi. That impacts Mississippi. So as a baseball coach, you've been a part of hosting a regional and super regional. You played in one, too, in the state of Mississippi. What is your initial reaction and stance on this, John?
Well, just two things, Bo. The first thing is I'm really disappointed that our kids and our coaches could be held responsible for something that they had nothing to do with, So that's issue number one. But issue number two, which is a little different than issue number one, is that I agree. I think it's time for change. Our president, Mark Keenum, has made his voice clear on that. I can't speak for all the people in the state of Mississippi, nor would I. But I think it is time for a change. We represent Mississippi State University. There are so many facets of what we do at this university. We recruit personnel. We recruit student athletes. And I think it's just time for a change. And even though I don't want our players and staff to get hurt by this ruling by the NCAA or the SEC, I understand it, Bo.
Yeah. Was it an blank moment, or did you feel like it was coming? And have you already had discussions with coaches like Chris Lemonis since this dropped last week?
Well, we've had discussions with our coaches for a variety of reasons. We just wanted to make sure that our kids, even though potentially, and I'm saying potentially, Bo, because I still think there's a chance that, and I'm just going to say this, I still believe that there's a chance that we're all going to do what's right, which is remove the flag and change the flag. But the issue I have with the kids is, we have to take care of our kids. And I'm just going to be honest. I feel like our softball team, I feel like our soccer team, our baseball team, our women's basketball team, they're going to be really good next year. And they all have a chance to host NCAA regionals. Our tennis team hosted 2 rounds just 2 years ago. They're ranked in the top 5 in the country. I don't want to see that happen. When you are hosting an event, it's because you have earned it. And Bo, I just would hate it if that got taken away from our kids and our staff. Because
it's hard. It's
very hard.
You know how difficult it is to host all the regionals or NCAA games or so on that you just referenced. John Cohen, MSU AD, on the Miller Lite guest line. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. All right, we'll pivot into another difficult, challenging topic issue, and that is football season. I ask you this every time you're on. Where do you think the SEC is today as far as playing football this fall?
Yeah, I think that we get so much different information all the time. And the information we're getting, Bo, is the same information everybody else is getting. There's a concern, certainly with the information we've gotten, especially over the last week or two. I'm still optimistic that we're going to be able to play football. I just think that the needle keeps moving. I think that the parameters keep changing insofar as what we're getting from the medical community, and that's a little bit concerning. But again, we still feel optimistic that we're going to have football in September.
It's interesting. There was some, I guess, articles or discussion last week from the Big Ten and maybe the Big 12, John, about conference games only. I'm sure y'all have, 47 scenarios in front of you every week, and I would think some roll off, some roll back on, change, and so on. That'd be fascinating to see something like that. But, I mean, this is a combination. Let's just cut through it. This is football drives the train. There's so much money on the table for the conference and other conferences. And the only way for the other sports that you just referenced to play is for football to make the money, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just a huge portion. It's a revenue stream for us on campus and off campus, meaning that, our television revenue is at a very high level. And just to be perfectly honest with you, that's what funds, you're right, most of the rest of our other sports. Men's basketball is a sport that drives revenue through their tournament. Certainly, women's basketball is a sport that's very popular here that we've created some revenue. Baseball is almost becoming, revenue neutral, meaning that they're making as much as they're spending, which is incredible when you look at the landscape of college baseball around the country. But you're right. Football is a sport that's going to provide revenue so that all of our other sports can exist at a high level. And it's really important, Bo, because we want to be highly competitive nationally and within the SEC in all of our sports.
Yeah. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. John Cohen, athletic director at Mississippi State, joining us on the Miller Lite guest line. All right, let's pivot again. Let's talk about something fun. You may not have had an opportunity, but I watched the Ken Griffey Jr. doc last night. And as a former baseball player, all SEC, was on a college World Series team, got to start for a ranked team and under Ron Polk and so on. And when I was a kid, John, I thought Ken Griffey Jr. walked on water. He was just so dynamic and engaging. And in the mid-'90s, I was bartending in college. So after the shift, we would watch Mariners games because they were hot in 95, 90, and good, 95 and 96. So we got to see a lot of Griffey Jr. play. When I say the name Ken Griffey Jr., what comes to mind?
Yeah, he's just one of those five-tool guys that just don't exist. He can run, he had arm strength, he had power, he could hit for average. He's certainly a dynamic defender, covered a large portion of the field, and his makeup was off the charts. He really changes the nature of what Seattle is all about. And I tell you, when you look at the clubs, the early clubs that he played on, those were fun clubs. They were really, really good. I remember Jay Buhner. I can't remember the DH they had, who just was inducted in the Hall of Fame. But they had a really, really nice team, and they had a left-hander, I'm trying to remember his name, who threw like 100 miles an hour at 6'10". So
Randy Johnson, baby, right?
Yeah. They were so much fun to watch because they had so many different pieces to the puzzle of winning. So, yeah, but Ken Griffey Jr., he's our modern-day Willie Mays, who is another, five-tool player.
He got to play with his dad, which is remarkable, who was part of the Big Red Machine. So they get to play together for just a minute there in Seattle at the beginning, and then eventually his dad's a coach with the Reds once he goes to the Reds in 2000. But Harold Reynolds, I thought, said something over the weekend that really jumped out at me, John, and that was when Griffey Jr. showed up for spring training his first year, they couldn't believe how big he was because Harold Reynolds said, look, back then, baseball players weren't 6'4". And even though he weighed, $185, he would eventually fill out and look, like a tight end or a small forward in the NBA. But, that really resonated with me. Does it with you?
Yeah. The thing about it is size matters in baseball because everything's about leverage, although the game does allow for smaller frames as well. But, he was one of those special talents that just comes along every year. And what's amazing about Ken Griffey that he played in a very controversial time in baseball because of steroids and all those things.
Sure.
But he seemed to bypass all of that in terms of his popularity and the way he treated people. He's – what always gets me, though, I have to tell you this, Bo. I don't know if he had any votes against him for the Hall of Fame, but I just want to meet these sports writers who voted against Ted Williams or Babe Ruth or Ken Griffey Jr. or whoever. I just want to meet those guys and just say, what are you thinking? But that's another whole subject.
Yeah, that's what Jay Buhner said last night, and it was great in the documentary. He was like, "Who were the people who didn't vote for Junior when he was up for the Hall of Fame?" And Buhner, who was already kind of a chiseled veteran, you could tell in the doc last night how much respect he had for Griffey. And then one other thing that I thought Harold Reynolds said, and you know all about this with guys that you've coached. Reynolds said his work ethic was ridiculous, that he made it look easy, but that Griffey got to the ballpark at 2:00 in the afternoon to start taking BP and start working on his body and start doing all the things that he needed to do, even though he was a superstar. He never took it for granted.
Bo, with the guys that I've seen who are sons of former major league players, it usually goes one of two ways. Either they were, allowed to do things and be in clubhouses and they took it for granted and they just didn't have the work ethic that their father had, or they realize how hard their dad worked to get to the big leagues and stay there, and they have ridiculous work ethics. And I certainly think Ken Griffey Jr. is one of those guys. He understood it. His dad was one of those guys that got there early and stayed late, and he was certainly one of those guys also.
And the power numbers without PEDs, as you talked about earlier, I mean, how impressive is that? Really robbed for 4 seasons with the Reds, with hamstring and knee issues and so on, but played his tail off, as you know, as far as climbing the wall and going to get everything that he could in the outfield and the way he ran the bases too. It was super documentary on Ken Griffey Jr. John Cohen, MSU AD on the Miller Lite guest line. All right, John, I'm sure we'll do this again next week as we get closer and closer to Labor Day or decision day for the Power 5 conferences in the SEC. But we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate you.
Take care. John Cohen on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. All right, I thought he made a great point early in the interview in that, he doesn't want, neither does Keith Carter or Jeremy McClain for that matter, but he doesn't want his student athletes to be at a competitive disadvantage because we talk about this all the time on the show. It's so damn hard to win. The margin for error on a Friday night game in the SEC, Ole Miss, Vandy, MSU, Florida, dude, when you get into the 8th inning, and it's 2-1, 3-2. Y'all know, you've been to the games, you've watched them. I mean, think about how difficult it is to get that one base runner on base, to get an extra hit, to get them to second, to get them in scoring position, and to possibly win the game, which then in turn puts you in position to possibly take the series, which taking 2 out of 3 is incredibly difficult. He mentioned softball, soccer, women's hoops, all where we've seen Mississippi State and Ole Miss field very competitive teams, how difficult it is to win. And they train 12 months out of the year to play 4 or 5 months out of the year. And it's hours upon hours, invested to try to win a game that is just, who knows? Who knows who's going to hit the 3 and or get the base hit or the strikeout and paint the corner to give you the W, to put you in position to host a regional or an NCAA tournament game.
But on the other hand, I've been told it is not super hard to get to Omaha.
Well.
So,
I don't know what to do about that. All right. That was a good interview. Alan Lang was good. We wanted to hit that. We're not going to do the whole show on the state flag. We are going to, go back into it and out of it. I've got some more things that I want to hit. First of all, how about the ESPY from Snacks last night? Jackson State.
Thomas Lee, baby.
Yeah.
What's up?
We're hoping to have Rob J on later in the show to discuss. Rob was on the call, by the way, for the Jackson State Network.
Incredible.
For some of you who don't know, Snacks was the manager.
That's right.
Who hit the shot from what looked like, and I know we'll continue to embellish, like 50 feet, but it was maybe 25, 30 feet, but it was a long way away.
He hit a couple of them, I think he hit a few threes in that game. So we'll have the audio on the other side. We don't have enough time right now, but we'll hit it on the
cool
on the other side.
I can't wait.
8 o'clock.
And Rob J was great on the call.
Hilarious. He's like wheezing. He's laughing so hard because he knows this is small college basketball. Rob knows the players, and especially a manager who'd been in the program for 4 years, like Snacks. So it was he's cracking up.
And at some point we'll have that on our YouTube channel, right?
That's right.
All right,
later
cool.
Today.
All right, we'll have that on the YouTube channel so that you can watch it. Also, some news coming out of, I guess Birmingham/Charlotte. There's going to be an SEC Nation shakeup. And so the morning show. Some of you watch it, some of you don't. Some of you stay on game day, which is great. Some of you may eventually go to the Fox Sports show a little bit, which is Reggie Bush and
be interesting to see.
Matt Leinart, two just huge names in college football.
And Urban Meyer.
That's right.
Almost as huger.
Yeah, he's big. That's a statement.
He's a name.
He's also tied to the SEC, and there's also a little villain in him.
A lot of villain in him?
People, like to dislike. How about that?
Well, he played at two schools that are easy to dislike as well.
Florida and Ohio State?
I think so.
Okay.
I think people definitely don't like Ohio State. Florida, not as much, but I think between Spurrier's run and Urban's run with Tebow, it was easy to not like Florida if you weren't a Florida fan.
Right. So the SEC Nation shakeup is this. Paul Feinbaum and Marcus Spears are leaving. Laura Rutledge is going to be back. She's super talented. She does a great job. I mean, she was great on Feinbaum. She made that show a lot better. Jordan Rogers is going to join it, and he's just magnetic and really good on TV. He is. Even though he wasn't a star, I mean, he was a good player at Vanderbilt, and he played at out of 14 teams, it's the 14th best football program in the SEC. He's just really, really charismatic and magnetic on TV. And then, of course, Tim Tebow will be on it. So then they'll add someone else. I don't know who that will be, but the fourth party person, it'll be interesting to see what SEC Nation does there. So it's Laura Rutledge, Tim Tebow, and Jordan Rogers right now on SEC Nation. Hour number 2 coming up, powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center.